Market Journal, television for agricultural business decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.
Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine.
Hey everybody, I'm Troy Moling, and thanks for joining us today on Market Journal. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and that you're enjoying your holiday season. On today's show, we're taking a look back at some of Market Journal's top stories from the year. We'll begin with livestock production. It's the largest sector of agriculture in Nebraska, so it goes without saying, improving the livestock industry will help grow our economy. The Nebraska Livestock Friendly County program recognizes counties that actively support that industry. Last August, Market Journal spoke with Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts at the state capitol. We asked him about the importance of livestock in Nebraska's economy.
Livestock is part of our agricultural industry, and agriculture is the heart and soul of what we do in here in Nebraska. It drives our economy. 1 in 4 jobs in Nebraska is tied back to agriculture. And if you look at the over 20% it makes up of our state economy, about half of that is related to livestock. And so one of the ways that we can grow agriculture is by growing livestock here in our state.
And one of the ways that we are trying to do that is by creating counties that are livestock friendly. Tell us a little bit about that program.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Livestock Friendly Program is a designation that the state gives to counties when they go back and take a look at their regulations, work with the state to get that designation, basically see what can they do to make sure that they're being welcoming to those businesses, and frankly also setting the rules for the people in that county so they know what will happen if a livestock operator comes to their county. So at the end of the day, what it really says is that the county commissioners and the zoning people have all gotten together to say, hey, we're open for business. We want to see more livestock operations in our county because we know that helps us create jobs in our county.
And it's important for producers as well.
Yeah, because one of the things that any business wants, and especially livestock producers, is they want that certainty. And again, when you establish those ground rules, what it says is the county is business friendly and open for business. Those livestock operators can come in and get established and again start creating the jobs that then help support the local economy, property taxes, schools, roads. And it's not just the jobs on the livestock operation, it's also the jobs that are related to agriculture, whether you're talking about somebody who's going to be the seed salesman or the implement dealer or the bank examiner or whoever it would be, the loan officer. All those jobs are going to be tied back to agriculture. So by growing that fundamental core of agriculture and especially livestock, what that allows us to do is create other jobs that then make sure that we have those great opportunities for our young people to stay in our counties.
Now we're doing a pretty good job here. We're up to 50%. I think Polk County is the latest one to create this designation. But 50%, how important is that to the state?
Yeah, Polk County was the one that pushed us over the edge to get to 50%. And that is fantastic for the state of Nebraska. That shows again that the counties are getting on board with these programs and are putting the rules in place so that they're welcoming to those livestock operations. And that's absolutely critical for us as a state. What we have to do to grow agriculture is focus on value-added agriculture, and livestock is our best opportunity to do that. To take the row crops we grow, the hay, the dried distiller's grain, and be able to feed it to livestock here in our state rather than shipping it out of state adds value to it and creates more economic prosperity for us. And so by making sure that we're livestock friendly, we're helping grow value-added agriculture that really, again, ripples through our entire economy.
You talked a little bit about this earlier, but let's really reiterate the value of livestock producing in Nebraska.
Yeah, so if you look at all of our overall ag receipts, livestock makes up about half of it. And we are a huge exporter of, for example, beef. We're the largest beef exporting state in the country, over $1.2 billion. Last year, our beef exports to Japan, for example, grew by 26%. But that's not alone. Our pork exports grew by 46%. So what we want to do is make sure we have more opportunities to be able to grow those export markets because about 95% of the world's consumers lie outside our borders. And livestock, that protein is going to be in huge demand in a world that is increasingly looking for that. It's a huge opportunity for us. And again, that livestock friendly designation helps make sure we've got the counties in place that can welcome those livestock operations and be able to create those great paying jobs. And it's also great from the standpoint of when you bring in those operations, it helps not only create those direct jobs, but allows that livestock or our farmers and ranchers to be able to diversify the revenue stream, allows them to bring young people in and build equity, all things that strengthen our ag economy.
Now, one of the things that it seems like this is saying is Nebraska is open for business. Is this working?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, I mentioned how our exports are growing, so we're really developing that reputation worldwide for our high quality products. We can also see it when I was in Japan last year. We went to a restaurant that has since rebranded itself with the Nebraska name because of our high quality beef. We see it in companies like Costco when they chose to locate their poultry processing facility in Fremont. They did that because they know that we're a great place for them to be able to grow. Not only are they going to be creating those 800 jobs in Fremont, but the opportunity for about 125 farmers to put up poultry barns, which will again help them to build that equity, bring young people back, all those great things that go along with growing value-added agriculture. And again, I think what they see is a great opportunity here in Nebraska to be able to do that.
And we've had some struggles in the industry in recent years. Things are looking good right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you look at what we're doing, we're growing our beef industry, we're adding on to our swine herd. I think we're a great opportunity for people in poultry. We mentioned Costco already, but you've got Hendricks Genetics, which has opened up a chick hatchery in Grand Island, one for turkeys down in Beatrice. So I think you're seeing that people are seeing us not only for beef and pork, but looking at other areas of livestock that they grow, like poultry, and that we're a great place to do that because we've got that great accessibility to water, especially with the Ogallala Aquifer. That's helped us, for example, become the #1 state for cattle on feed. But it also means that we've got the great opportunity to irrigate. We're the largest irrigated state in the country. That creates certainty around that feed source. And that's something that is attractive to people as well. When you can bring in that corn and those soybeans, it really helps make that operator know that they're going to have access to that high quality feed. And of course, if you look at that Costco plant, they are going to use about 360,000 bushels of corn every week and about 3,000 metric tons of soybean meal. That's equivalent of about 2,000 acres of corn and 2,000 acres of soybeans every week. That's going to be a tremendous benefit to those local farmers and helping out with their basis. Huge deal. It's a win-win.
For more information and to see a map of livestock-friendly counties, you can visit the Nebraska Department of Agriculture's website, and that is nda.nebraska.gov. According to Wind Power Monthly, wind energy is set to overtake hydroelectric power by the year 2020. And just as wind farm development has swept the country in the past decade, people are always looking for that next big thing. And it may just be as simple as looking up. Large-scale solar development is relatively new, but is already growing steadily. In February, Market Journal spoke with Nebraska Extension's John Hay about small-scale solar farms and updates in this burgeoning industry.
Really, if we look across the United States, agriculture producers that have higher electricity rates, in particular, we might look at states farther east, they're really able to put in a system and maybe have a payback of under 10 years, which is looking pretty good. And so the economics look good. The actual installation is pretty easy to do now. There's a lot of installers out there. As we come a little farther back towards Nebraska, those economics are good. They're not great. And so good, I would say maybe 8 to 12-year payback on a farm or small business system. That's not too bad, but for some people that might not be quite a quick enough payback. So that's where we're at today. The major, 5 years ago, that would have been 20 years. So we are improving. We may see a little bit of improvement in the future, but really we're down to those levels. Part of the reason we're a little longer payback than some of the states east of us is that our electricity rates are low, which is a good thing. But if we're trying to then replace that with our own electricity, that's where that low cost is going to hurt the payback a little bit.
What kind of planning goes into this?
The big thing that you want to do to get ready for this is understand your load, understand where you're using electricity, because if any reduction you can have is going to help with that system cost, because I don't have to put a biggest system in. Also, when you do contact the installer, you want to contact maybe more than one if you can. Try to get your quotes. Try to make sure those quotes line up with respect to apples comparisons, because they can be very different. They're going to give you a payback number, but that payback number is really based on their assumptions. And if their assumptions are very aggressive, we can show a 5-year payback, 4-year payback, 3-year payback, great. but their assumptions are probably a little too aggressive. We need to get realistic, and that's where the numbers that I said, that 9 to 12 years, is really more in the ballpark of what's real.
What time frame are you looking at for how long it would take to fully implement something like this?
Well, you know, we're seeing a lot of small systems go in on residences, and then quite a few on small businesses. There's really a lot as we go into some of the states farther east. Nebraska, it's happening a little slower, like I said, but there is some limitations that we can see on the future, but we're quite a ways from getting to those. Those would be, we have a net metering law in the state of Nebraska. Currently, that net metering law says that when a utility hits 1% of their peak, they don't have to net meter anymore. And there's a few utilities that are part of the way there, maybe a quarter to half, but most utilities aren't even close. So there's a lot of systems can go in before we even get close to those numbers.
How does the tax credit issue impact this?
That's really important. I mean, with the numbers that I was quoting with respect to payback are including the tax credit. There's a 30% federal tax credit, and that federal tax credit is in place till 2019, the end of 2019. If you put a system in after 2019, so into 2020, there is a reduced tax credit, and it then stair-step reduces down for a few years till it goes away. So really, if you're interested in a system, you want to be looking at it at least before probably the middle of 2019 to maybe try to get it in place before the end of 2019.
Earlier this year, California gave final approval to require solar panels on all new houses. That's set to take effect in 2020. Nebraska Extension is a statewide program that strives to give growers the latest information on crop and livestock research to help improve production. For the Northeast Nebraska District, the Haskell Agriculture Lab does exactly that. In August, we spoke with Agriculture and Natural Resources Vice Chancellor Dr. Mike Boehm at the Haskell Ag Lab open house to learn more about Nebraska Extension facilities.
Our research, extension, and education centers across Nebraska give us a tool, really, a vehicle to extend our teaching and learning, our research and extension work across all 93 counties. I mean, that's the bottom line. So we are here in just east of Concord, Nebraska at the Haskell Ag Laboratory. And we are having a climate and crops field day, which is just spectacular. It is a vibrant engagement. This is what we hope to see at our research, teaching, and extension centers around the state. You know, the good news about Nebraska is that we have one state university. We have one state university that has 5 campuses, including the Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture. We have 6 community colleges designed, located throughout the state, and we have 3 state colleges. So as far as Nebraska's higher education system, it's amazing. That system interacts with our 245 public school systems. So from pre-K through 12, connecting then with our 2-year programming, connected with our 4-year programming and beyond. So I think the bottom line is we all owe it to our state to help grow Nebraska. We do that through investing in people, and those people then, when they have desires for education, when they have questions about their production systems, whether that's livestock farming or cropping systems, the university system, the land-grant university system in America really has 2 amazing powers, if you will, superhero powers. One is the ability to discover and provide objective, evidence-based, science-based information to those who can use it to move their own health and well-being and vitality forward. Second is the power to convene. We have the opportunity to bring people from different walks of life with different perspectives and to bring them together in a way where they can explore difference and think about common good, and then figure out ways to work collaboratively to move the needle forward. So that is really the essence of the land-grant university. And you know, I think at the University of Nebraska Lincoln, certainly in the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources, where we have almost 1,800 men and women every day who show up to work. who are thinking about the success of others, it's a powerful recipe for success. And today here at Haskell Ag Lab, we're seeing that.
For more information on the Haskell Ag Lab and other Extension sites, visit extension.unl.edu. Moving on now, and with a population of less than 200, you might be forgiven if you haven't heard of the town of Brownville, Nebraska. It's located on the Missouri River in the southeast part of the state and has deep roots in agriculture. In October, the Brownville Historical Society honored its strong ag roots with the opening of the newly renovated Wheel Museum. The museum features exhibits dedicated to early Nebraska agriculture, publications, and Robert W. Furness. He was the second governor of Nebraska who founded the state's longest printed magazine, Nebraska Farmer. You can learn more in the December issue of the magazine. American Sorghum reports that over the last 50 years, sorghum consumption has declined by 52%. Meanwhile, wheat, corn, and soybeans' importance in global diets grew significantly. One way to make sorghum more useful for humans and livestock could be to improve the protein quality and digestibility. Dr. David Holding is a UNL Associate Professor of Plant Molecular Genetics. In April, he sat down with Market Journal to talk about CRISPR, a new gene editing technology, and how it could help change the industry.
Sorghum is a crop that grows very well under limited irrigation conditions. So in summers where we have very hot conditions, sorghum is often a very good option for growing in dry land environments. In summers like 2012, sorghum was performing very well and became a viable option compared with corn, and it just does much better under limited or no irrigation conditions.
Sorghum may be a great crop for hot and dry weather conditions. However, according to David, sorghum produces a lower yield when compared to corn, and its grain only contains about 10% protein. Sorghum's protein is deficient in lysine, which is an essential amino acid needed for the diets of humans and monogastric livestock such as pigs and chickens.
Okay, so the proteins that accumulate in grains such as corn and sorghum are deficient in lysine because they have a preponderance of the so-called prolamine storage proteins. Those dominate the proteins. So if we can reduce the amount of those proteins, then we can increase the amount of other proteins that collectively have a better amino acid balance and make that grain more nutritionally complete as a food.
In order to create a better amino acid balance in sorghum, David is using the strategy called CRISPR.
The game-changing aspect of CRISPR with respect to crop biotechnology is that we can make those gene edits and then we can go in and remove that transgene just with a simple cross. So in the process of breeding that crop, we can cross it to whatever germplasm we want our trait to be in, and in the process select against the transgene. So we have a genetically engineered, if you like, crop without a transgene. So this is attractive because it makes the regulatory process that you have to go through with a genetically engineered crop much less stringent, so you're ending up with something that you've changed a gene, but doesn't meet the definition of genetically modified.
According to a statement issued on March 28th by the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue, the U.S. Department of Agriculture will not regulate or plan on regulating plants that undergo gene editing techniques such as CRISPR. Therefore, plant varieties can undergo changes such as a genetic deletion of any size, single base pair substitutions, insertions from compatible plant relatives, and complete null segregants.
We have been using CRISPR to target the prolamine storage proteins. And the way we have innovated this is that we've used it to target not just a single gene, but the whole of the prolamine family, if you like. The reason we were able to do this is because that family have a very similar DNA sequence, and by choosing the most similar sequence, we could target, using a so-called consensus guide RNA, we could target that whole family for partial shutdown. And this is key, this is critical. We did not want to create a sorghum line that had no prolamins. We wanted just to subtly reduce them so that we still have good hard seeds, but we have lower levels of prolamins, increased levels of non-prolamins, which collectively have higher lysine, thereby increasing the lysine and increasing the digestibility. And so we have proof of concept of this. We have several lines which still have the transgene that causes the edits in there. We're in the process of outcrossing those to get rid of that transgene. So it's bringing sorghum into the level of being a complete protein. What I mean by complete protein is that it has all of the essential amino acids present in the amount that you could, in theory, eat that grain and not need another high-class protein source.
Although gene editing can be used to protect crops from droughts and diseases along with eliminating allergens, the goal of David's research is to enhance the nutritional value of sorghum and improve the digestibility of sorghum proteins through gene editing.
My take on this is not making sorghum a better crop in terms of its heat and resilience and water and nitrogen use efficiency. Sorghum already has that, okay? What we need is ways to make sorghum more attractive in the end product. So one of the things about sorghum is this is an alternative grain to wheat, and everybody has heard of increasing prevalence or at least awareness of gluten intolerance, be it celiac disease or celiac independent gluten intolerance. So the more sources of whole grain that we have that do not have glutens, the better we are. And so there are a number of opportunities for increasing the use of sorghum for human food sources, but also the US and including Nebraska is a major exporter of sorghum. So this is potentially viable for exporting to Africa and other countries, India, for example, for uses for human consumption.
Thanks to Dr. Holding for that information. Well, Al Dutcher's off this week. I think he must be at home recovering after eating a few too many Christmas cookies. But in his place, we have a weather-related story we first brought you in June. Market Journal met with Nebraska State climatologist Dr. Martha Shulski at UNL's Rogers Memorial Farm to learn more about the Nebraska State Climate Office's Mesonet Weather Stations.
So we're here at a Nebraska Mesonet Weather Station. That's the environmental monitoring network that's run out of the State Climate Office. And this happens to be our research and development site. And we have a tall tower here, and we measure things like air temperature, relative humidity, wind speed and direction, rainfall, liquid precipitation, soil temperature at the 4-inch depth under bare soil, and then soil moisture at 5 depths under grass cover, and barometric pressure. So all those variables we measure in this network, and we have about 70 stations throughout the state of Nebraska.
Among the 70 Mesonet stations, there are 4 stations in Lincoln, 1 in Plattsmouth, and 3 near Meade at the UNL Ag Research and Development site. Mesonet stations have been around since 1981 and were originally designed for agriculture, but now they also serve as an environmental mentoring program. As Martha mentioned, these stations are equipped to observe hourly conditions of variables such as air temperature, humidity, liquid precipitation, wind speed and direction, solar radiation, barometric pressure, soil temperature, and soil moisture. To understand how these stations collect all of this data, we further asked Martha to explain how each piece of equipment on or near the station's tower works.
So in the gill shield there, we have air temperature and humidity probe. And so a few feet above the ground, we're measuring what the temperature is and what the relative humidity is. We have wind speed and direction. And on this particular tower, it's measured at 2 different heights. And so we're actually, we implemented new wind sensors across the network that are less vulnerable to icing over during the winter time. So we went to a more robust model. And so we're comparing that to the old one to see what sort of difference do we get. So that's why why you see 2 on this one. So we measure wind speed and direction at 10 feet and then at 30 feet. And this is one of the towers that we have. On our other stations, we have a tripod configuration. So we only measure wind speed at one particular height. And we have 3 of these towers across our whole network. And we like to eventually go to more towers so that we can look at things like temperature inversions, and that would bring utility to spray applications and spray drift and those kinds of things. We have a bare soil box that measures the soil temperature at the 4-inch depth, which is a really popular observation in the springtime when it comes to those warming soils and what the temperature is. We have our precipitation gauge, which is a little tipping bucket mechanism in there, and we're actually testing a new kind of precipitation gauge, and so we're running those side by side out here. And we have barometric pressure, which is something that you can't visibly see so easily, but that measures, are we in a high pressure, low pressure, and how fast is the pressure changing over time. We also look at how much sunlight there is, and so we have a little sensor that measures incoming solar radiation, so how much sunlight are we receiving at the surface. And so that's kind of an overview of what we observe across the network.
The Mesonet stations are supported by the state of Nebraska in collaboration with the Department of Natural Resources and the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources at the University of Nebraska Lincoln. In addition, there are many agencies and individuals who have contributed to network operations through service agreements for specific stations. As always, all of the data these Mesonet stations provide can be found on the Nebraska State Climate Office website. On the website, there is a map of Nebraska that shows where all of the stations are located.
So all the information can be found online in real time, so you can look at the latest hourly observations all across Nebraska at mesonet.unl.edu. And you can also look at yesterday's rainfall, how much rain did we get across the state, what are the growing degree days to date, what's the evapotranspiration estimates, maximum wind gust, things like that.
Martha tells me that 8 new Mesonet stations were installed in Nebraska this year, 6 in eastern Nebraska and 2 in the Panhandle. Well, that's a wrap on Market Journal for 2018. I know for me personally, it's been a wonderful first few months in the state, traveling around and finding the stories that impact you. I look forward to what 2019 has in store. Thanks for watching, everyone, and Happy New Year.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.